Iconic samurai Miyamoto Musashi dueled and killed over 60 men in his lifetime, leading him to eventually pen down everything he knew about martial arts into his book of 5 rings. Muhammad Ali is a boxer who never killed anyone, instead defeating some of the scariest men to ever live in hand-to-hand combat, leaving his mark inside and outside of the ring. And what's fascinating about these two men separated by hundreds of years is how many of the same techniques, tactics, and attitudes they employed to achieve impossible victory after impossible victory. One thing I've noticed after practicing martial arts for over 30 years and making these videos for nearly 10 years is how the greatest fighters always seem to have the exact same realizations. A Warring States-era samurai and a prize fighter from Kentucky, through hours of deep focus, practice, and implementation, they found the same essential truths. It's my hope that in this video, I can illustrate the similar techniques, tactics, and principles employed by both of them. Then go even deeper to look at the philosophy that seems to be a natural development of risking everything in pursuit of victory. The unique attitude and vibe that seems to be inherent to walking hand in hand with death. The first principle Muhammad Ali used to knock out Richard Dunn. Musashi called the principle no thought, no idea, and Ali called it the acupunch. Throughout the fight, Ali dominated with the picture-perfect right hand. Now, there was nothing special about this punch in and of itself. He was simply using the stable right lead against a southpaw. What made the acupunch technique special was the shortened reaction time. Ali having worked on this extensively with the father of American Taekwondo, Jun Rhee. Rhee echoed Musashi, who believed that through enough practice and with enough resolve, a fighter could train his body to move on its own, reacting ultimately on instinct, the fist hitting all by itself. Of course, Ali had already gained this skill through experience. However, singling it out and working on it specifically for the first time improved his performance greatly. The greatest attributed his knockout of Dunn to the shortened reaction time of his acupunch. The second principle Musashi called attack, no attack. He advocated never favoring one form of offense over another, declaring, "Be prepared in spirit to change the direction of your attack at any moment. In every situation, you must be flexible enough to change the entire structure of your attack, the main purpose being that of cutting or striking the enemy dead. You may, for instance, attack high, then, mid-motion, change direction to attack low." Ali's jab was the greatest example of this. It traveled out from multiple origins, sometimes starting high, sometimes starting low. It traveled in all different directions, changing at a moment's notice. His admirer, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, would later adopt this same strategy. Musashi expands on this concept of attack, no attack, all throughout his Book of Water, carrying over the idea of having no preferences to how you throw the strikes themselves, advocating that the only important thing is what works for you in that given moment. He states, "Imitation is the surest form of flattery and failure." Even those who know very little about boxing can tell that Muhammad Ali's strikes were far from conventional. While his footwork attracted attention, he usually had a unique way of throwing almost every single punch, each perfectly designed to work for him. He would cross his back foot behind him while throwing his right, so that he could keep strafing offline. He would land hooks with the bottom of his fist like a karate chop to help find angles through his opponent's guard. And of course, his footwork was anything but orthodox, his skipping and hopping lending him extra reach for his jab. His Ali shuffle working as a distraction tactic and a way to humiliate and dominate his competitors. Just like Musashi's two-sword style, Ali's style defied all convention and brought with it a form of rebelliousness inherent to the personality of its creator. The next principle is called the body of spirit and stone. Musashi shares it repeatedly. It's a theme that runs throughout the entire book. The idea is not to cling to any one strategy or plan, but to only use what works in that moment. As Musashi puts it, When you truly understand the way, you could take any form that you want to. You can become as light as a feather, as fluid as water, or as stiff as a board. The Rumble in the Jungle is one of the most famous fights of all time. Ali stopped dancing and shelled up against the ropes to tire out the monstrously powerful champion George Foreman, a tactic which he would later name the rope-a-dope. Once Foreman was worn down from throwing his own punches, Ali took him out, regaining his championship. Later on, after his stamina left him, Ali leaned further into high guard tactics in place of his mobility. If Ali had tied his ego to one strategy and abandoned the harsh truths of reality, or that age had taken some of his abilities, he could not have achieved victory. Musashi's next principle is to humiliate the enemy by blocking and countering. Ali used this principle with head movement more so than blocking, but it enraged his opponents all the same. He would keep just out of range, coaxing them to overreach until they compromised their position. All it took was a mistake of an inch or less, and Ali could punish it. If not for implementing Musashi's next principle, Ali may have very well been knocked out by Joe Frazier, and that is to impress your attitude on your opponent. This is basically a form of psychological manipulation. Frazier had rocked Ali so hard he was close to falling over, but instead of taking a knee, shelling up, or running, Ali instead taunted Frazier, mocking him by wobbling his knees. Frazier bought it and lost the opportunity to finish the fight for good. As Musashi explains, to impress your attitude on your enemy is to force him to think in terms that are to your advantage. When you understand your own abilities, you are able to pass them along to others in the same way a teacher can pass along correct or incorrect ideas and teachings. Without success in your heart and mind, you can never know whether information is true or false. When it comes to the Book of Five Rings, the principles discussed are only single threads in a very large tapestry. And Ali is only one great champion among many to use these same essential truths that always seem to reveal themselves in the most dramatic fights, when the stakes are the highest and the competitors are truly elite. There is one big problem with all of these principles of Musashi's when it comes to Muhammad Ali. Musashi used as his starting point the assumption that there's no reason to fight if not to learn how to kill, stating the way cannot be learned through frivolous contests in which the outcome is for the name of a school or a large trophy. It can only be realized where physical death is a reality. By Musashi's standards, Ali should not be considered a real warrior in the first place. But if that's the case, how was Ali able to find all of these same deep truths? Ali didn't even believe in the concept of knocking out his opponent, let alone killing them. He would sometimes pull his punches and call over the ref to stop the fight early, so as not to damage a worn-down opponent any more than necessary. Contrast that to the text in the Book of Five Rings, and you have an inescapable contradiction. In his way, Musashi has a good point, in that showing kindness or hesitating means putting yourself in more danger. Martial arts aside, even in everyday life, almost everyone has experienced an instance where your own morality cost you something. You showed mercy, and it backfired. Is our conscience, as Musashi would claim, a liability, distracting us, a chirping cricket that needs to be squashed? If so, how do you explain the vast success of Muhammad Ali, who showed mercy to his opponents and fought for the rights of others against his own best interests? How did he succeed against impossible odds while still holding something back? How did he stay his hand against the monster George Foreman as he seemed to fall in slow motion towards the canvas, knowing that if he did not strike, he may soon get back up? I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and my own personal answer is that it's less about your particular moral code and more about conviction. This is the place where Ali and Musashi sync up. Musashi talks at length about knowing yourself and behaving as you are. Few exemplified this as much as Ali. And so, by knowing your beliefs and knowing why you hold them, you have no hesitation. Whether you choose mercy or ruthlessness. This clarity, all parts of yourself moving in the same direction with total effort, that's where power lies. Hesitation is defeat, and conviction is victory. Know yourself, clearly think out your own beliefs, and determine exactly how far you're willing to go before you step into battle. Do this, and you may achieve great things in the ring and in life. If you want to learn more about martial arts techniques, check out my technique books. If you want a great story about samurai and martial arts techniques and boxing, check out our comic book series, Mortal Weapons. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.